Hey everyone, thanks for being a part of our weekend thoughts and especially being a part of our online community here at Central.Church. We began a brand new series this weekend entitled Miracles. And we're going to break it up a little bit, but we will be in this series, although there'll be different parts of it, in this series to the rest of this year. And I am so excited about this series. And if you haven't had an opportunity to be with us yet this weekend, and hear this weekend's teaching time, then let me encourage you just to hit pause right now and go on over and watch this past weekend or this weekend's teaching time, and then come back and just pick up right here with Weekend Thoughts. So here's what I want to kind of just walk through this time, and just here's what's running and thinking through my mind. Over in John chapter 3, in John chapter 3, we see a dialogue that takes place between Jesus and a religious leader by the name of Nicodemus. And I just want to draw your attention to, as we spend time in this miracle series, and then as we come out of week one of the greatest miracles that is performed, that we see through the church, that we see Jesus moving through people's lives, is actually that aspect of life change. As people come to know what it's like to have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, as their life is transformed, or as we're about to talk about in just a minute, they're born again, is one of the greatest miracles that we get to be a part of, that we get to see take place on a day-to-day basis. And we see this initially through the life of Nicodemus, or this conversation that takes place with Jesus and Nicodemus. Nicodemus, over in John chapter 3, John shares with us, Nicodemus came to Jesus and just shared with him. He said, it's obvious that you have great authority. It's obvious that there's something special about you just by seeing the miracles that you're performing. Now notice what he says. He says, notice by the miracles that you're performing that you are connected, in other words, to God. And Nicodemus is acknowledging that. I want us to take a step back, though, and I want us to look, because some of you might be able to relate to this right now. Notice that in John chapter 3, it says that Nicodemus comes to speak to Jesus at nighttime. In other words, in the secret of night, as Nicodemus is investigating, as he's searching out Jesus, he comes to him in private. In other words, he knows there's something going on. He knows there's something going on spiritually in his life. And he's investigating it, and he wants to investigate it quietly. And I think maybe for a lot of people, maybe even for you, you are trying to investigate. In other words, you have this persona that people are seeing out front, but deep down inside, internally, and in secret, in darkness, you are investigating about this relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that's where Nicodemus was. Nicodemus, there was this idea as a religious leader, something that people were seeing on the outside, but inside, something was going on inside of him internally. Something was going on inside of him spiritually. And he was seeking out Jesus to get some answers to his questions. And in this dialogue between Jesus and Nicodemus, we see here that this discussion takes place. And Jesus said to him, he said, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. And Nicodemus questioned Jesus. He says, how can one be born again? Being born as an infant and growing into adulthood, it's impossible for someone to become a baby again, to become an infant again. But Jesus goes on to explain to him that that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about becoming born again. In other words, he actually uses the illustration, if you look on there in John chapter 3, which I would encourage you to go back and look at this dialogue between Jesus and Nicodemus. Jesus goes on and shares with Nicodemus about the exodus of the children of Israel out of the hands of the Egyptians. And he talks about that in correlation to what he's about to do in going to the cross and being crucified for not only for Nicodemus, but for his creation, for the world, for you and for I, that he was about to shed his blood. And in other words, he's sharing with Nicodemus something that Nicodemus would understand, that he would have known, specifically because being a religious teacher, he would have known this time period in the children of Israel's lives. And he says, this is a foreshadow of what I'm about to do. That because of what I'm about to do, the shedding of my blood, which we have to acknowledge, because Jesus was willing to go to that cross for us, because he died on the cross, because he shed his blood for us, because he was laid in a tomb, but then rose from the dead. Jesus is sharing with Nicodemus that he's talking about the spiritual being born again. In other words, this connection that he's sharing, that Jesus is the bridge, is the gap between us and God. And coming to surrender our leadership, our way of thinking, our ideology over to the way of thinking of Jesus, over to Jesus' dreams, over to Jesus' ideas. In other words, being born again. This miracle of being born again, this miracle of being transformed, this miracle of saying, I give up my life, I give up my leadership, I give up my ideas, I give up my dreams, to allow my dreams to become Jesus' dreams, to allow my ideas to become Jesus' ideas, to allow my way of thinking to become Jesus' way of thinking. In other words, partnering in life with Jesus, to allow Jesus to lead me in my life, to allow my life to be transformed, to allow the old life to die, and to allow a new life to rise up in me, to be born again in this relationship with God through Jesus Christ, to become a child of God. To become a child of God. So here's our challenge. Different challenges I want to give you through this weekend thought. Number one is this idea of being born again, this miraculous thing that takes place, this transformation that takes place. You know, I have 3 children, and all 3 of those, as my children were born, I had the privilege, the opportunity to be present and be right there when each one was born. And I'm fascinated with it. You know how you have this baby that this mother carries in her womb. There's this life together between the mom and the baby, and then the baby is born, and then there's this umbilical cord that where the baby has basically been getting things from the mom, the nutrients it's need, all these things, and then that baby umbilical cord is cut. And it's kind of like, if you will, specifically, I remember it really, just really spoke to me, and really just amazing thing to watch, especially when our first child was born. And it's almost like God breathing life, knowing that is life, and knowing that it's breathing, but it's separated from its mom, and now it's like, okay, you're on your own. And I kind of relate that to us in our own lives, because, in being born again, we're doing life on our own. We're trying to figure out life on our own. We have our own plans, our own ideas, our own thoughts, our own dreams, our own ambitions. And then all of a sudden we hear about what it means to have a relationship with God through Jesus. And as the Spirit is moving in our lives, and as all this, we come to the point where we realize, hey, I want to surrender my life to Jesus. I want Jesus to be the leader of my life. I want the lordship of Jesus to lord over my life and to guide me. And our dreams become Jesus' dreams, and our ideas become Jesus' ideas, and our thoughts become Jesus' thoughts. And we work together, this partner. We become born again. In other words, the cord is cut from the old, and Jesus breathes life into us. He breathes life into us as we walk with him as children of God. As children of God. This past weekend, I talked about the challenge that for us all to take on. I'm calling it 3-3-3. And here it is. It's 3 people for over the next 3 months that we're going to pray for, that will come to know a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. In other words, I want you to jot down at least 3 people right now, if you haven't already. If you weren't able to be actually in the weekend worship, or where like I said, hopefully you've already caught weekend worship online and you jotted these down, and maybe you even have more than 3. But for the next 3 months, we as a church at 3 p.m. every day for the next 3 months, we're going to be praying for at least 3 people. That what we say is that if you fill in the blank, if this individual came to know a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, in other words, they became born again through Jesus, that would be a miracle. It would only be a miracle if, and you fill in the blank with that individual. And we're going to pray to God. We're going to pray over the next 3 months at 3 o'clock every day for at least these 3 people, that a miracle will take place in their life. That they will come to know a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. That they will be born again. Like this conversation between Jesus and Nicodemus, that they will be born again. That they will come to know what it means to have this eternal, to be a part of God's kingdom, to be a part of His church, to be a part of Jesus' bride, and surrender their life to Him. So 3, 3, 3. 3 people at 3 p.m. every day for the next 3 months. We're going to be praying for them. That if this person comes to know a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, if they become born again, it is a miracle. And we're going to be praying for that. And we're going to be doing that together as a church, as an online community, as a church, and as in person, as a church at home, as a community. You guys have a great week.